Terraria 1.4.5 has just recently released, and I am going to defend to my life whipstacking in Terraria. If you don't know what whipstacking is, it's basically a technique where you quick swap between different whips, so you can take full advantages of the different effects that each whip has. So for example, the Snapthorn whip gives you a melee speed boost on hit, and the Dark Harvest also has a melee speed boost on hit. So what you can do with whip stacking is that every single hit you can swap to the other whip so that you get the other whip's effect. So in this case, you get the Snapthorn's melee speed buff, and then while that is still in effect, you swap to Dark Harvest, and then get another melee speed effect, which means that the effect is doubled, and you can continuously do this for as long as you can keep swapping between whips, and this is really cool. However, I do admit this is fucking busted, and this is because of tag damage. Tag damage basically adds damage to a summon, and the problem is with tag damage is that it's flat. The damage increase is flat, and that's the problem. That is what makes whip stacking insanely overpowered. It's not the effect stacking, it's the tag damage stacking. Because with tag damage you can easily elevate your damage way higher than it's originally intended. But with effects, it's not nearly as easy to maximize damage to that degree. So in my opinion, remember, this is an opinion, feel free to disagree. Please, if you disagree, tell me why. I would really like to read other people's perspectives, because I really like reading other people's perspectives. So, in my honest opinion, what they should have done was either A, they completely remove tag damage and only tag damage. B, they nerf tag damage to the ground if and only if you swap to a different whip. And with both options, the whip effects still lingers when you swap to a different whip. So this keeps the effect stacking of the whip, but removes what makes whip stacking insanely overpowered, which is tag damage. And the reason why I'm defending this so hard is because whip stacking just adds more depth to a game that doesn't really have that much of combat depth other than dodging and using a different weapon than usual. This gives Summoner a well-known glass cannon class, even more of a glass cannon. And you know why? Because if you're on the keyboard, or I don't know how it is on controller, but if you play with a keyboard, you are probably using the default controls, and that means WASD and the number buttons uses the same hand. And this means if you are actively whip stacking, you will have a hard time dodging, because the fingers that you normally use for WASD would be occupied with whip stacking. So where's the skill? The skill is where you can manage when to whip stack and when to dodge, and also being able to whip stack effectively, because believe it or not, it is skillful. However, I'm pretty sure actually no, it's the exact same as it was before the update. The skill requirement is the exact same. The only difference is that they removed the reward. I know whip stacking is unintentional, but it's such a good addition. It's such a cool addition to keep for Summoner. because it adds more skill expression and depth to a game that doesn't really have that much of a combat depth. Please, either you nerf tag damage to the ground or completely remove tag damage when you swap to a different whip, but you have to keep the whip effects. You have to keep the whip effects because mages can do the exact same thing, alright? Mages can do the exact same thing with the different weapons they have. They can stack different debuffs with different weapons and there's no problem with that. So why isn't this a problem for Summoner? Summoner is already a glass cannon. It deserves to stay a glass cannon, and if people can make the cannon even stronger at the cost of making the glass even more fragile, keep it, please. Whip stacking doesn't have to be overpowered. It just needs to be slightly powerful for min-maxers. It doesn't need to be super powerful, it just needs to be slightly more powerful than normal summoner gameplay. Please. Thank you for watching.